Okay. Oh, no. So we left at ACLs. Let's quickly jump onto ACL section. Okay. So ACLs. So so in terms of ACLs and ASA ACLs, there are many similarities between ASA and iOS ACLs. For example, both are made up of ACE, like in a in ISO we have a ACE, which is one statement in each ACLs, and they are processed sequentially as well from top down. And there is something called implicit deny any at the bottom. That means it will deny everything else. And additionally, there's the rules of only one ACL per interface, per protocol, and per direction. And all sort of things still apply in ASA ACLs. Okay, and what's the difference between ASA ACL and iOS ACL is that they use a network mask. Okay, for example, 255, 255, 2550 instead of wildcard mask, which we used in number iOS ACL like 0000255. So here we're going to be using network subnet mask, for example, 255, 255, 255 and 0 for 24 subnet mask. And instead of having 000 instead of for ones. So that's the only difference. Oh, don't think so. Can't think so anything. But basically, when you apply all the rules, it's the same thing. It's the way they have discussed it in when you have the the iOS one. In this one, they are saying they're gonna ignore all the ones, the initial ones, and they're gonna just look at the remaining values, all the zeros. While here is opposite. So it's just a rule, or you can apply either of these, you're gonna get the same result. Either you can, so it's like whether you wanna use zeros or you wanna use ones. So if you're using ones, that you means all the network which are matching, you're gonna apply that rule over there. If you use zeros, that means all the hosts that are matching, you're gonna apply to those ones. So either you can have home network, for example, if you go network like 192.168.1.0. So one ACL, one rule says that if your network is 255.255.255, which is 192.168.1, then you will either let the traffic go or you deny it. Other says if you have to match the following ones, for example, you have to still go 192.168.1.0, and then you have 255.255. So the traffic which is allowed is from 0 to 255. So that's the only thing allowed. But if you look at the other side, which is 255.255, you still allowed only 0 to 255 anyway. So either you take 0 or you take 1, it's gonna be the same traffic will be get affected with that ACLs. So it's either one or the other way. You're gonna be affecting one traffic, but when you say the difference, what you applied is really have no idea. It's like a commands like why they have show IP interface brief rather than show interface IP brief, which is in ASA. You can still go with the show IP interface brief, but there must be some sort of underlying mechanism why they did this one. But unfortunately, I really don't know the exact answer for this one. Okay, moving on then, we have a different type of ACL filtering. This is something we discussed before as well. Any high level allowed it to go to lower levels. For example, this if you have a security level 100, then you can go to the lower levels. but lower levels denied the entry to higher levels. In over here, any lower level will be denied the entry to higher level network. So this is one of the filtering that we implement in your firewall. So in terms of, yeah, yeah, hmm, yeah, yeah, coming through it. Yeah, exactly. So that's the reason. That's why you said the outside level to either 0 or let's say 50 is if it's a DMG. Yeah. So that was the reason. So you don't want any third party or anyone from the cloud to access your computer. So anything, any connections which are requesting access to your computer will be blocked. So but again, like you can set up the settings on your firewall or in ACL as well, where the traffic which was initially originated or the connection which was initially originated from inside to outside, any the traffic coming back to same connection will be routed. So any new connection will be blocked, not but the existing connection will you can still allow it, but you have to do these things in ACLs. Otherwise, any any reply coming back to your request from inside will be blocked as well. So you have to allow those sort of things in your ACLs. So in terms of types, we got a standard and extended ACLs. We discussed this one as well, the standard one and where to apply standard one, where to apply extended one. You have any idea whether we apply standard close to the destination or close to the source? And the same thing for extended, whether we apply them close to the source or close to the destination. You remember anything about standard, extended? I say, okay. Well, I was saying, do you know where we apply standard ACLs? Either we apply it close to the source or close to the destination. Same thing is other way around. We apply one. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, standard is close to the destination. Extended is close to the source. This is where you apply them. Okay, so the same sort of rules here as well in ACLs and configuring ACLs. You can have, help again. You can type in help and access list. You go get all the information about the ACLs, what you can configure, what sort of options you can have. But the basic set is this one. If you remember, we usually type in access list ID and either standard or extended. Then you specify deny your permit, and then you specify the protocols. Or you can specify the host or any as well, based on your requirements. So this is the main statement that you usually typed in when you specify the ACLs. Here again, this is the description of each of the things that you can specify. For example, ACL ID, source, destination, these sort of things that you can specify as a part of your ACLs. Applying an ACLs, again, you can apply the ACLs to an interface. So you can type in a command called access group, then ID in and out. And this is important, whether it's the traffic coming in or traffic going out on that particular interface. And then you can specify, whether it's in and out traffic, and you can apply the ACL to that particular interface. Then again, you can use the object group as well. The same thing that we mentioned before. You can have you can create a object group, and then you can use that object group to specify ACLs. I'll give you an example over here. This is a big example where you can create object group, and this is example of extended ACL. You can create object group, and then you can specify ACL to that particular object group. So all the host or all the setting that you specify in that that object group basically will be applied. If you all the ACL will be applied to that particular group. So this is the example of that one. You can specify access list IT, again extended standard. So at the end you basically specify the object group. Whatever the object group is, you specify the name of that group. Here again, the one that we created, you simply specify the name, and these settings that you're going to specify here for ACLs will be applied to this object group. In this object group, you will have a number of hosts or maybe a range of hosts. Then all these settings will be applied to those ones. And here's the example. So you have host B and host A and B, okay, and you call a network host, and then you got something called server host, and over here you specifying, the setting to net host or server host, okay. Then moving on, we have TripleA. This is something we discussed initially. I think it was chapter 2 or 3, a part of Cisco security. TripleA, there are 3 things that we do here: authentication, authorization, and accounting. In authentication, basically we are checking only the authorized users are able to access access your network. Authorization is basically user can only access what they are authorized to, okay. And finally, accounting, we basically log all activity of the user. Okay, so 3 things: authentication, authorization, accounting. We check, validate the user, whether the user is right or wrong. Then we authenticate, authorize what he can do over the network, and finally we log all his activity. So again, we looked at Radius and TACAS. These are the 2 things protocols that you can have on AAS. TripleA, and the same thing you can have in your firewall as well. You can set up these 3 protocols, and you can set up the TripleA on your firewalls. It's a similar sort of configuration that we did, over on the router. You can have an EA server as well, a separate, that manage everything, but it depends, whether you really need a separate one, because it's going to cost you a lot as well. But based on your requirement, you can set it up. The configurations are basically the same thing that you do on other ones. So the last one in the list is something called Modular Policy Framework. Okay. Or simply call it MPF, Modular Policy Framework. So it's a set of rules for applying firewall features such as traffic inspection, quality of services, or to the traffic that come across or go across the ASA. So you can basically, in this one, this is a framework that help you to set up some sort of rules. So there are 3 important things you have to remember. One is the map, the policies and class map, policy maps, and service policy. These are the 3 things that you set up, okay. And I'm gonna cover this one by one, how we set it up. So what you do basically in a class map, it basically, for example, in these steps over here, the first step is simply configure extended ACL to identify traffic that can be specifically referenced to a class map. Over here, for example, you want to identify the traffic, whether the traffic is a TCP traffic, UDP traffic, and HTTP traffic. Okay, and what you can do, you can create something called a class map, okay, that basically identify the traffic. Or what you can do, you can create some sort of how should I explain this one? So let me write it down here. So usually this is the traffic, okay. This is one traffic going into your firewall, okay. This is your firewall. But these maps are done. You can basically classify this one traffic which is coming into a different type of traffic. For example, one traffic could be a TCP. This is your firewall now. One could be a TCP, one could be a UDP, and one could be HTTP traffic. Okay, and you can create something called a class map. In a class map, you can have a traffic which is of one type. Each class map will have one type of traffic. Either it will have a UDP, HTTP, or TCP traffic. And once you have categorized those traffic, and then you can have to configure something called a policy map, okay, to apply actions to those class maps. So over here you will have a class map of a different type of traffic. Here you will have actions, okay, that you want to do to that traffic. And finally you're gonna activate policy. That means you're gonna apply those two things to an interface. Okay, now let's look at how this has been done. So this is a class map, the first thing where you identify the traffic. Okay, so you create a class map like this, class map all TCP. So this, what it will do, it will match access list TCP. So access list is this one. Okay, this is the access list you have defined over here. So this map will basically match all the TCP traffic. Now this map will match all the UDP. This map will match all the HTTP traffic, and that's it. Okay, we just created a map that basically matching a separate traffic. So once you have these maps, now you have to define action. Okay, what you want to do. And now here's the action. So you have three types of actions. One is to set a connection or to inspect, for example, provide protocol inspection server, or policy, set a rate limit for traffic in this class. So what we're gonna do is we want to inspect that particular traffic. For example, in this case, they have created a class map called class map TFT, in which we are monitoring TFTP traffic. Okay, so now we here in the inspection, where you specify the rules, you basically specify the rule that you want to inspect that traffic. What this traffic is, you want to check each of the TFT traffic. And after you define that rule, now you have to set up the policy. So for this one, the command is simply service policy, and this is your policy TFT, which is your map, and global means you're gonna specify it globally, okay, on all the interfaces. So this is what you do. You create three things. You specify your traffic, you categorize that traffic, and then you specify the rule, and then you finally link them together using a service policy. And moving on, you have something called a default service policy configuration as well. So if you do not do all this, if you don't specify the map and you don't specify the inspection, by default there are some sort of policy rule or automatically configured on your ASA firewall. And these are the ones, for example, policy map, global policy. So this is your global policy, and it is basically inspecting or each of these the services that you have. For example, FTP service or TFTP or any other services which are listed on here, they will by default inspect those packets or anything which is all the traffic which is going or passing through your firewall. And that's it. So that's cover your ASA, your basic introduction to ASA, and different sort of configuration that you can do on ASA. And in your chapter 10, basically this is this chapter basically shows you how you can do the setting using CLI. Okay, manually you have to configure everything, but in the next chapter we're gonna be doing stuff using using a wizard, GUI system. So that's it. Any questions so far, guys?